You just watched something happen that, 20 years ago, would have been impossible. No cash exchanged hands. No bank. No card. No receipt machine. No middleman. Just two people, two phones, and a transaction that settled instantly. This is happening millions of times a day, all across Kenya. In cities, in villages, in places where the nearest bank branch is a 3-hour drive away. And it all runs through one company. How did a Kenyan telecom company create the financial system that the entire world is now trying to copy? Here's the short version. In 2007, Safaricom launched a service called M-Pesa, M for mobile, Pesa meaning money in Swahili. It let ordinary Kenyans send money to each other using nothing but a basic mobile phone and a text message. No smartphone required. No bank account required. No internet required. Within 2 years, more Kenyans were using M-Pesa than had ever used a bank in the entire history of the country. It was not just a product. It was a financial revolution, and it started in Nairobi. To understand why M-Pesa was so explosive, you have to understand what Kenya looked like before it. In the early 2000s, Kenya had a massive problem that most developed countries had already solved. Most people simply could not access a bank. In 2006, only about 26% of Kenyan adults had a bank account. For the other 74%, financial life meant cash, keeping it under the mattress, sending it home via bus drivers, or trusting a neighbor to hand-carry wages from the city to the village. It was slow, it was risky, and it was expensive. If you worked in Nairobi and needed to send money to your mother in Kisumu, 350 kilometers away, you basically had two options: find someone traveling that direction and hope they delivered it, or use a formal wire service that charged fees most workers couldn't afford. This wasn't a small inconvenience. For millions of Kenyans, this was a crisis that trapped families in cycles of poverty. Safaricom itself was born in 1997, initially as a business unit of the state-owned Kenya Posts and Telecommunications Corporation. In 2000, Vodafone, the British telecom giant, acquired a 40% stake, bringing in capital and expertise. The Kenyan government retained a 35% share, and the rest went public. It was a scrappy, ambitious company operating in a market that most global investors considered too poor and too risky to care about. But then a small research project changed everything. In 2003, Britain's Department for International Development funded a study exploring whether mobile phones could help small microfinance institutions in Kenya manage loan repayments. The researchers, working with Vodafone, noticed something unexpected. People weren't just using the system to repay loans. They were using it to send each other money. It seemed obvious in hindsight, but at the time, it was a revelation. The need had always been there. Now, for the first time, a tool existed that could meet it. Vodafone and Safaricom didn't ignore the signal. They built a product around it. In March 2007, M-Pesa went live. The genius of M-Pesa was its simplicity, and its infrastructure wasn't built in a data center. It was built in corner shops. Here's how it works. Step 1. You become a user. You walk to any M-Pesa agent, and there are over 176,000 of them across Kenya, more than every bank branch and ATM on the continent combined. You register with your national ID. You get a mobile wallet linked to your phone number. That's it. You're in the financial system. Step 2. You load money. You hand cash to the agent. They credit your M-Pesa wallet the equivalent amount. Think of it like loading a Metro card, except instead of trips, you're loading real shillings that you can now send anywhere in the country. Step 3. You send. Using the SIM toolkit, that little menu buried in every basic phone, you select Send Money, enter a phone number, enter an amount, enter your PIN. Done. The recipient gets an SMS confirmation in seconds. Step 4. They receive. The person on the other end walks to their nearest agent, shows their phone, shows their ID, and walks away with cash. Or, and this is where it gets powerful, they just keep it in their wallet and use it to pay for something else. What Safaricom had built was essentially a parallel banking system, one that ran on SMS, was secured by PIN, and operated through a decentralized network of small shop owners who became de facto bank tellers. The agents earned a small commission on every transaction. Safaricom earned a small fee, and users got a service that was faster, cheaper, and more reliable than anything formal banking had ever offered them. To send 1,000 Kenyan shillings, about $8, across the country via M-Pesa costs less than 30 shillings. Compare that to Western Union or a bank transfer, which could cost 10 to 15 times more. The math was impossible to argue with. By the end of 2007, M-Pesa's first year, 2 million Kenyans had registered. By 2010, that number was 14 million. By 2023, it was over 32 million active users. In a country of 55 million people, Kenya went from one of the least financially included nations on earth to a global benchmark for what financial access can look like in less than a decade. Here's the thing that Western tech companies are only beginning to fully grasp. Kenya didn't leapfrog the banking era because it had better technology. It leapfrogged it because it had no choice, and Safaricom was paying attention. And now, in 2024, the world is looking at what Safaricom built and realizing this is the future. M-Pesa has now expanded to 7 African countries. It processes more than $61 billion in transactions annually. On some days, the value of money moving through M-Pesa equals nearly half of Kenya's entire GDP. But Safaricom hasn't stopped at payments. From the M-Pesa platform, Safaricom has built an entire financial ecosystem. M-Shwari lets users save and borrow money from the same phone with no paperwork. Fuliza is an overdraft facility that kicks in automatically when you're short. KCB M-Pesa offers loans of up to 1 million shillings, approved in minutes, using your transaction history as a credit score. For the first time, a grandmother in rural Nyanza has a credit score, not because a bank decided to give her one, because her own phone behavior earned her one. When COVID-19 hit in 2020, Kenya's government needed to send emergency cash to millions of vulnerable citizens, fast. Because M-Pesa existed, they could do it within days. No queues, no corruption risk, no printing paper vouchers. Straight to the phone. Economists estimate that M-Pesa has lifted approximately 2% of Kenyan households out of poverty. That sounds small until you realize that's nearly 200,000 families. And Safaricom isn't slowing down. In 2022, the company launched in Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country, in what is the largest single market expansion in M-Pesa's history. The Ethiopian opportunity alone represents over 120 million potential users. For context, that's larger than the entire population of the United Kingdom. Here's a number worth sitting with. 57% of all mobile money transactions on the entire planet happen in Sub-Saharan Africa. Not in China, not in the United States, not in Europe, in Africa. And Kenya, through Safaricom, started that fire. The continent that the world once wrote off as too poor for fintech is now running the most sophisticated, mass-market financial infrastructure on Earth. So let's come back to where we started. That vegetable seller who just got paid without a single coin changing hands. She isn't just using a convenient app. She is participating in a financial system that Safaricom built from scratch, in a country that the global banking sector had abandoned, using a network of shopkeepers, a simple text message protocol, and a single, radical idea that everyone deserves access to the economy. A government telecom unit became a private company. A pilot project on loan repayments became M-Pesa. A mobile money service became a credit system, a savings platform, and a government disbursement tool. And a Kenyan story became a global blueprint. The banks said it couldn't be done. The consultants said Africa wasn't ready. The investors said the risk was too high. Safaricom simply built it anyway. And now 32 million Kenyans, along with millions more across East Africa, live in a world where your phone is your bank, your credit history, your safety net, and your connection to an economy that once had no room for you.